So, solving equations. The goal when we're solving equations is to get the variable by itself. So on the top of your note sheet, it says goal for solving equations. You're going to write to get the variable by itself. So at the very top of your note sheet paper, you're going to put to get the variable by itself. Now, this is a little bit of a review because we already talked about the goals to get the variable by itself. Anytime you solve for equation, that's the common goal. It's going to be the goal every single time. You're also going to have the golden rule every single time, which is whatever you do on one side of the equation, yeah, you have to do to the other side. So you must do to the other side. The next part then, it says another important rule. The other important rule says to get rid of things on one side of the equation. So to get rid of things on one side of the equation, you must do the blank operation. Opposite, but the true term is inverse. Okay? Okay. I am going to highly recommend that you guys take excellent notes because this triad, Mr. McFarland, myself, and Miss V, is not going to just simply say, oh, don't you remember you do this and this and this. We are going to make you guys use your notes. You're going to have to rely on your notes. So make sure you are getting the best notes down possible. Okay? Inverse. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at example number 1. Let's go ahead and write that down. We have 3a plus 8 equals 14. Now, I know that this is going to be a two-step equation because it has more than one number on the left side of my equal sign with my variable. So what that means, I'm going to go ahead and circle my variable. I'm going to draw my line of equality. It's going to be a two-step equation because it's going to take me 2 steps in order to get the variable a by itself. Now this is where it gets hard because you can't just pick any random spot and start working. You're going to have to find a rhythm or you're going to have to follow necessary steps in order to determine which number am I going to get rid of first. Because what 2 numbers do I have to ultimately get rid of in order to get the variable a by itself? 3 and 8. So when we're solving equations like 5 plus 2 times 3 divided by 2 equals something, what do I use in order to solve that equation? How do I know how to solve that equation? I use order of operations. What's the mnemonic device that helps me with order of operations? What helps us? Order of operations. Do you guys understand? Remember order of operations? Okay. So when I'm doing order of operations, what do I always have to solve first? You're close. Order of operations. What do I always solve first? What's that?
Oh, the eat.
It's there. It's there. What is it?
I can remember the name of it.
There we go.
Yeah.
We have PEMDAS, right?
Yeah.
So when we're doing equations where we're not solving for the variable and we're just solving, we use order of operations called PEMDAS.
What's that?
So what's the P stand for?
Oh, no.
What's the P stand for?
Punctuation?
No, not English. Well, kinda. I guess you could kind of think of it.
Point.
Say it again, Kira.
Multiplication, division, addition, subtraction.
Dang, good. So listen. So the P stands for parentheses. The E is exponents. The M and the D is multiplication and division. But if you remember that, we do that at the same time working left to right. And then the A and the S is addition and subtraction. Again, we do that at the same time working from left to right. However, when we're solving for a variable, we've been using the opposite a lot. We have to do the opposite to get the variable by itself. Inverse operation, right? So the opposite appendus is what we're going to use in order to get the variable by itself. So the opposite appendus would be written Sorry, I write my E's funny sometimes. SADMEP. So we're going to use PEMDAS backwards, so SADMEP, to get the variable by itself. So what that means, you're going to look at this side where the variable is. Do you see any subtraction problems? No. So then you go to your A. Do you see any addition problems? Yes. Now, to get rid of that plus 8, we do the inverse operation and we subtract 8.
Yes, you do.
Now, golden rule. Whatever I do on one side of the equation, I do to the other. We'll get there. So this right here is going to be step 1. Okay? Because we got rid of the 8. So what I do, I always go back through and I clean up each side of my line of equality here. I'm going to bring down my 3a. I'm going to bring down my equal sign, and then I'm going to go ahead and solve. 14 minus 8 equals 6. Okay. Now, my goal, according to my notes, is to get the variable by itself. Well, look here. Is the variable by itself yet?
No.
So now what do I have to get rid of?
The 3.
The 3.
Do you multiply that?
So-
What's the body?
Good. So 3 touching a variable or never touching a variable means to multiply. The inverse operation of multiply is division. So we're going to divide each side by 3 in order to get the a by itself. So again, I'm going to clean up my left side, show that my 3's cancel. I'm going to bring my variable down on the left, my equal sign on the line of equality, and then on my right side, I'm going to solve. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And box your answer. So,
That was smooth.
so two-step equations. If you look, listen, here's step 1, here's step 2. Okay? We did 2 operations. What are the operations that we did?
7 mil.
We added and divided. So
How you gonna do?
here and here. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at example number 2.
I don't like this stuff.
Candy.
Thank you.
So this next one, example number 2, we have 3 times parentheses b minus 4 equals 21. Now, do you have to have this little dot here to show that it's going to be 3 times the parentheses?
No, 'cause that little piece,
Yeah.
Where it goes, same thing.
You could just have the 3 against the parentheses. Good. For this particular example, there's 2 ways that you can solve this. I'm going to show you using SADMEP first, and then I'm going to show you the other method. So remember, we're going to use order of operations backwards in order to get the variable by itself, which is SADMEP. And I'm going to go ahead and set my equation up, or my equation up how I do every single time by circling my variable, draw my line of equality, because my ultimate goal is to get that variable by itself. Now, getting the variable by itself, we're going to do order of operations backwards. So, do I have any subtraction? Yes. But what's the problem with the subtraction that I have? It's in the parentheses. And when am I supposed to do the parentheses?
Multiply.
When am I supposed to do the parentheses according to our order of operations that we use for solving for equations?
That's what you do for
At the end. So because the subtraction is in the parentheses, I don't touch it to the end. So then I go to addition. Do I have any addition? Any division? Any multiplication? Yeah, what, Kelly?
3.
That's times 3. So to get rid of that times 3, I use inverse operation, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide this entire side by 3. Golden rule, Kelly, whatever I do to one side, I do to the other.
Wait, so you multiply that or you
Well,
divide that?
the inverse operation of multiply is divide. This lesson, think about solving for the variable as kind of like opposites. You do the opposites of what you see. So on my left side, I'm going to bring down my parentheses, b minus 4, my equal sign on my line of equality, and then I'm going to go ahead and solve. Jaden, what's 21 divided by 3? 7. Okay? There's step 1. Step 2 now, I'm ready to solve now. So my goal is to get the b by itself. So how do I get the b by itself?
7 minus 4.
How do I get the b by itself? Raise your hand if you know. Jalen?
Just said.
Plus 4. Why am I going to plus 4?
I mean, it's minus 4.
Yeah, so the inverse operation of minus 4 is going to be plus 4. If I add 4 on one side, I add it on the other. Show that that cancels. Now I can just bring down the variable b by itself. I don't need to worry about the parentheses. So b equals, what's 7 plus 4? 11.
I can tell if that's a 4 or 4.
It's a plus 4. So this is one way to solve it. I want to show you guys another way to solve it. If you have room, maybe try to fit it between example number 1 and example number 2. But I'm going to show it all in red here. So another way to solve this is you have 3 times b minus 4 equals 21. So I'm going to go ahead and circle my variable. And I'm going to draw my line of equality. Raise your hand if you've heard of distributive property before. You don't have to know how to do it, but raise your hand if you've at least heard of the term distributive property. Okay. So distributive property is when you take the number on the outside of the parentheses, if it means to multiply, and you multiply it by each number on the inside of the parentheses. So what we're going to do, we're going to take 3 times b. What's 3 times b? Okay. And then we're going to distribute the 3 times negative 4. What's 3 times negative 4?
3 times negative 4.
Negative 12. And then equals 21. So all we did here was we distributed. We went ahead and got rid of our parentheses by using distributive property. The only time you can use distributive property is when it's the number is touching the parentheses, when it's meaning to multiply. Now, if this was 3 plus parentheses, you can't distribute then.
So that's
Okay?
fast way.
It depends on, honestly, it comes down to personal preference. I like to distribute. I think it's easier for me to visually see what I need to do next. So according to SADMAP, what number am I going to get rid of first here? Say it again. No?
12.
The negative 12, because subtraction is my S, my first. So the opposite of subtracting 12 is, so whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. I show that that cancels. I bring down my 3b equals 21 plus 12, 33. Okay? Last step, how do I get the b by itself? Michael, do you need to switch sides with Miss B? Would that help you see better? Do you need to move up? Okay. So how do I get the b by itself? Jair?
Myself,
How do I get this variable b by itself?
divide
By, okay?
both sides,
So then b equals
11.
11. Nice. I end up with the same answer. It just comes down to how you prefer to solve it.
I'd rather do the other way.
The first way?
Me, that's too much.
Now, eventually, we are going to get into more problems where you are going to have to distribute.
I pray not.
You are right. Your prayers have been answered. It is not today. Okay, let's take a look at example number 3.
Okay, that's easy. Never mind. Hate this.
Can you write this down for example number 3? So we have c plus 7 divided by 3. I think, in my opinion, this is the most difficult type of two-step equation problem that we're going to have. We're still going to follow the same rules by circling our variable and drawing our line, but now our goal is to get the variable by itself. Now, normally, when you're working with a fraction, like normally, let's say we had 2 plus 7 divided by 3, where would I normally start if I wasn't solving for the variable? Would I start at the top or the bottom? The top. But because we're doing the opposite, where do you think I'm going to start? If I would normally start at the top when the variable wasn't present, but I'm doing the inverse, where would I start then? The bottom. So the opposite would be the bottom. So I'm going to have to get rid of that 3 first. So how do I get rid of a 3? You're going to multiply. Because this line here, represents division. So the opposite of dividing is going to be multiplying. So we're going to multiply each side by 3. So then on my left side, I'm able to bring down the c plus 7 equals, and then 4 times 3. What's 4 times 3, David? 12. That was step 1 of my two-step equation. Now you guys are pros at this part. How do I get the c by itself?
-7.
Minus 7, that's right. Whatever I do to one side, golden rule, I do to the other. My left side, I bring down my c. And then 12 minus 7?
5.
5. And that's it.
I got one more to do.
So, another way that you can look at this problem, you guys, when you have a numerator, now do you see it's not just the c by itself. If it was just c divided by 7, that's something different. But this is a two-step equation with the c plus 7 on the top. Another way to help you remember that you do this part last is that you can just throw parentheses around it. Don't have to, but you can. All right, let's take a look at example number 4. So what I recommend that you guys do before you get panicky over a math problem, you always start with what you know, okay? So we're going to write out the example, d divided by 4 minus 7 equals -2. So what we know here is we're going to circle the variable. We also know after we circle the variable, we draw the line of equality. Solving two-step equations, we know that we're going to use PEMDAS backwards, which is SADMAP. So these are all the things that we know. Okay? So we're going to use, it's called a mnemonic device. It's just one of those things that help you remember what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to solve the problem. So if we look at SADMAP, the S stands for subtraction. Well, do I see any subtraction here? Yeah. The -7. Inverse operation of -7 is? Okay. So the golden rule, whatever we do to one side, we do to the other.
Make sure you cross it out.
That's right. Good. So I'm going to cross it out. So now on my left side, what is remaining? Excuse me.
5.
D divided by 4. Then I put my equal sign on my line of equality. Then on my right side, Kaylon, I'm going to solve. -2 plus 7. 5. Positive 5. Yep. Correct. And then we're back to where you guys are pros. One-step equation. How do I get the d by itself?
-4.
No.
Multiply 4.
Multiply 4. Because you have d over 4. Well, what's another word for over? Divide. The inverse operation for divide is multiply. So we're going to multiply each side by 4.
It's gonna be, that's an answer.
We're going to bring down what on our left side, Damon?
We're gonna bring down that D.
What on my line of equality?
And put the equal sign.
And then 20.
In the box.
That's it.
Let's be done for today. We're gonna catch up on it tomorrow. Nah, we'll put it on tomorrow.
Nope, guys, keep going. So, Okay. Flip it over. Flip it over. So multi-step equations. You only have to write one thing out. When solving multiple equations with multiple steps, use order of operation backwards to get the variable by itself. Well, now we've been talking about that since the front side. So what I would do, just behind that there, I would go ahead and write parentheses, SADMAP, so we know what we're talking about when we say order of operation backwards. Now again, remember, notes are going to be key in your quizzes and your tests. So I would make sure you're getting everything down. I am telling you guys now, we are working until 9:23 today. Shh, that's the time that we should be working to every day. So we are working until 9:23. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at example number 5. So go ahead and get this down for example number 5. Now, if you notice, every time I do a new example, I'm writing PEMDAS backwards for my visual reminder. Now, you guys could just use the top of your paper to have it written on that you can refer to every single time. Okay, so we're going to start with what we know here. We know we're going to circle the variable. We know we're going to draw the line of equality. We also know that the goal is to get the variable by itself. So I'm going to have to get rid of two numbers. I'm going to have to get rid of the 3 and I'm going to have to get rid of the 2.
I thought it was a 3 and a 1.
Nope, we're on the side with the variable. So from here, I need to determine which number do I get rid of first, the 3 or the 2. And that's where I'm going to go up, and I'm going to use that mnemonic device, SADMAP, to help me. So S, are there any numbers that I'm going to subtract? Say, okay, I don't see any subtraction signs. A. Well, that 1, though, is that on the same side as my variable? No, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm just focused on the side of the variable now. Then I go to an A. Do I see any addition signs? Yes. So right here's the addition sign. What number goes with this addition sign? The 3. So how do I get rid of that 3? Negative 3. So if I subtract 3 from one side, I do it to the other side. So on my left side, I bring down the G over 2 equals negative 1 minus 3, negative 4. And then go ahead and solve from there. So how do I get the G by itself? Multiply by 2, whatever I do to once.
There, and after that, what you do? Come on, Coach. You ain't finished the half of the problem. I'm saying, answer. What you doing?
So what?
After you don't get negative 8.
Why do I get a negative 8?
Because it's a negative 4. Right side.
Correct.